In the climactic moment of the War of the Last Alliance, Isildur stood on the brink of destroying the One Ring in the fires of Mount Doom. Elrond, the wise and ancient elf lord, stood beside him, fully aware of the ring's evil. But when Isildur chose to keep the ring for himself, Elrond did not stop him. This moment left many wondering, why didn't Elrond intervene? Was it reluctance, fate, or something more complex that held him back? In this video, we will explore the possible reasons behind Elrond's fateful decision and how it shaped Middle-earth's future. The One Ring, a masterpiece of dark craftsmanship, was imbued with more than just the malice of its creator, Sauron. It was an extension of his very will and essence. Forged in the fires of Mount Doom, the ring held a portion of Sauron's own life force, making it the linchpin of his power and the key to his dominion over Middle-earth. This artifact was not merely a tool. It was a sentient force with its own desires and intentions, primarily to return to its master and to corrupt all who dared to possess it. Isildur, son of Elendil, became an unwitting victim of the ring's seductive power the moment he severed it from Sauron's hand. In that pivotal act, Isildur believed he had vanquished the Dark Lord, but in reality he had only displaced his power into a new vessel, the ring itself. The ring immediately began to exert its influence over Isildur, capitalizing on his vulnerabilities. Despite his noble lineage and heroic deeds, Isildur was susceptible to the ring's allure, which played upon his grief, pride, and the burden of his legacy. The ring's power was multifaceted. It could manipulate emotions, distort perceptions, and bend the will of even the strongest individuals. It whispered promises of glory, immortality, and unrivaled power, offering Isildur a chance to elevate his kingdom and ensure his family's legacy. The ring also exploited his personal losses, suggesting that with its power, he could prevent future tragedies or perhaps even undo those that had already occurred. Such temptations were nearly impossible to resist, especially in the aftermath of a brutal war and personal bereavement. Elrond, a wise and perceptive elf lord, stood beside Isildur at Mount Doom and recognized the dangerous transformation taking place. He was intimately familiar with the ring's malevolent nature, understanding that it was not just a weapon, but a living embodiment of Sauron's will. Elrond knew that the ring's influence extended beyond mere physical possession. It corrupted thoughts and desires, making it exceedingly difficult for anyone to relinquish it once claimed. Confronting Isildur posed significant risks. The ring could incite paranoia and aggression in its bearer, potentially leading Isildur to perceive any attempt to separate him from the ring as a hostile act. Elrond might have feared that pressing the issue could result in immediate conflict, possibly turning Isildur into an enemy or causing him to flee with the ring, making it even harder to recover or destroy. The volatile nature of the ring's influence necessitated a delicate approach, one that balanced urgency with caution. Furthermore, Elrond was aware that the ring's destruction required the free will of its bearer. The act of casting it into the fires of Mount Doom was not just a physical deed, but a profound renunciation of power and corruption. Forcing Isildur might not have fulfilled the necessary conditions to break the ring's power, or it could have unforeseen consequences given the ring's deep connection to Sauron and the very fabric of Middle-earth's fate. Elrond also had to consider the broader implications of any action taken against Isildur. The alliance between elves and men was fragile, forged in the crucible of war, but susceptible to dissolution in times of peace. A direct confrontation could have shattered this alliance, leading to mistrust and isolation at a time when unity was paramount. The victory over Sauron was significant, but not absolute. Remnants of his forces remained, and other threats loomed on the horizon. Maintaining harmony among the free peoples was essential for the continued prosperity and security of Middle-earth. In essence, the power of the One Ring was a complex and formidable barrier that stayed Elrond's hand. Its ability to corrupt, manipulate, and sow discord made any direct intervention fraught with peril. Elrond's deep understanding of the ring's nature compelled him to approach the situation with restraint, hoping that wisdom and time might lead Isildur to the right decision. Unfortunately, the ring's influence proved too great, setting the stage for future conflicts and the prolonged struggle against darkness. Elrond's perception of fate and destiny was deeply rooted in his elven heritage and his extensive experiences throughout the ages. Having lived through monumental events, the rise and fall of kingdoms, epic battles, and the ebb and flow of power, Elrond developed a nuanced understanding of how individual actions fit into the grand tapestry of history. He was keenly aware that some events, no matter how tragic, were part of a larger design that ultimately served a greater purpose in the unfolding narrative of Middle-earth. The elves held a unique perspective on time and destiny, viewing the world through the lens of immortality. For them, the passage of time was less linear and more cyclical, with patterns repeating and lessons echoing across generations. Elrond may have recognized that Isildur's refusal to destroy the ring was a necessary chapter in a story that would span millennia. This event could have been perceived as a catalyst for future heroes to emerge and for the ultimate defeat of evil to be achieved in a more profound and lasting way. Elrond was also versed in the prophecies and foresight that permeated elven culture. The notion that certain outcomes were foreordained would have influenced his actions. He might have sensed that the ring's destruction was fated to occur under different circumstances, involving individuals yet to come, such as Frodo Baggins and the Fellowship of the Ring. By allowing events to take their course, Elrond could have been facilitating the fulfillment of these prophecies, trusting in the wisdom of the Valar and the guiding hand of Eru Ilúvatar. Furthermore, Elrond's own lineage embodied the intersection of fate and choice. As the son of Erendil and Elwing, and the descendant of both Elvisan men, he was intimately connected to the destinies of both races. His brother Elros chose mortality and became the first king of Númenor, while Elrond chose to remain with the elves. This personal history underscored the significance of free will and the profound impact that individual choices could have on the world. In the context of Isildur's decision, Elrond may have believed that forcing the issue would infringe upon the essential freedom that defines the human experience in Tolkien's world. Free will is a central theme in the Legendarium, and the ability to choose, even poorly, is a critical aspect of the moral structure of Middle-earth. By allowing Isildur to exercise his agency, Elrond was honoring this fundamental principle, despite the potential consequences. Elrond might have also considered the potential for redemption and growth that could arise from Isildur's choice. Perhaps he hoped that Isildur would ultimately recognize the peril of keeping the ring and decide to destroy it himself. Alternatively, Elrond may have foreseen that the burden of the ring would pass to others who were better suited to resist its temptation and complete the task of its destruction. Moreover, Elrond's decision can be viewed through the lens of humility and acceptance of one's limitations. Despite his wisdom and power, he recognized that he could not control all outcomes or bear the responsibility for every decision made by others. Accepting the unfolding of fate required a degree of surrender, trusting that the balance between good and evil would eventually tilt towards the light. even if the path was fraught with darkness. Ultimately, Elrond's understanding of fate and destiny influenced his actions by guiding him to respect the autonomy of others and to trust in the larger forces at work in the world. His choice to not compel Isildur was a reflection of his deep wisdom and his faith in the eventual triumph of good, a faith that would be vindicated, though at great cost, in the ages to come. Navigating the intricate hierarchy of leadership during the aftermath of a monumental conflict required Elrond to exercise diplomatic finesse and profound respect for established authority. Isildur, as the heir of Elendil, and now the High King of Gondor and Arnor, held a position of significant power and influence among men. Challenging his decisions could have been interpreted as a severe breach of protocol and an affront to the dignity of his office. Elrond was acutely aware of the political ramifications of any direct confrontation. The alliance between elves and men was a delicate balance, forged through shared sacrifice, but susceptible to tensions arising from cultural differences and historical grievances. Elrond, representing the elves, needed to maintain a cooperative relationship with the newly established realms of men to ensure continued peace and mutual support against lingering threats. Respecting Isildur's authority also meant acknowledging the sovereignty of men over their own affairs. The elves, despite their wisdom and longevity, did not govern the destinies of other races. Intervening too forcefully could have been perceived as an attempt to exert elvish dominance over men, reigniting old suspicions and undermining the hard-won unity achieved during the war against Sauron. Elrond's own experiences with leadership and counsel informed his approach. As a commander and a statesman, he understood the importance of allowing leaders to make their own choices, even when he disagreed with them. He had served under Gil-galad and witnessed the consequences of disregarding the autonomy of others. By offering advice without imposing his will, Elrond adhered to the principles of mutual respect and collaboration. Furthermore, Elrond may have recognized that Isildur was grappling with immense personal loss and the burdens of kingship. Forcing a decision upon him in such a vulnerable state could have had detrimental effects on Isildur's ability to lead his people effectively. Elrond's compassion and empathy might have led him to exercise patience, hoping that Isildur would, in time, come to see the wisdom of destroying the ring. The cultural norms of honor and duty also played a role. In the traditions of men, particularly among the Númenóreans, oaths and personal honor were held in high esteem. Isildur claimed the ring as a wergild, a form of compensation for the deaths of his father and brother. To challenge this claim could have been seen as dishonoring their memory and violating deeply held customs. Elrond would have been cautious not to trample upon these sensitivities. Additionally, Elrond had to consider the practicalities of enforcing any action against Isildur. Attempting to seize the ring by force was fraught with peril. It could have led to open conflict between their respective followers, weakening their forces and leaving them vulnerable to remaining threats. The risk of civil strife or even war between elves and men was a dire prospect that Elrond would have sought to avoid at all costs. In weighing his options, Elrond likely concluded that the potential negative consequences of confronting Isildur outweighed the uncertain benefits. By upholding the principles of leadership and respecting Isildur's position, Elrond aimed to preserve the fragile peace and maintain the unity necessary for the rebuilding of Middle-earth. His actions reflected a strategic consideration of the broader picture, prioritizing long-term stability over immediate rectification of a grave mistake. Elrond's deference to authority was thus a multifaceted decision, rooted in political acumen, ethical considerations and a deep understanding of the complexities of leadership. It highlights the challenges inherent in navigating the aftermath of war, where the lines between right and pragmatic are often blurred, and where the decisions of leaders carry weighty implications for the future of their peoples. The race of men in Tolkien's Legendarium is characterized by its inherent vulnerability to the allure of power. While men possess great potential for good, they are also subject to weaknesses that make them susceptible to corruption, particularly by objects of immense power like the One Ring. This aspect of human nature is central to the story of Middle-earth and is a key theme in Isildur's decision to keep the ring. Elrond, with his deep understanding of both elves and men, recognized this frailty, and it likely played a significant role in his hesitation to take direct action against Isildur's choice. The corruption of men is tied to their mortality, a condition that distinguishes them from elves. Unlike the immortal Elves, who are bound to the fate of the world, men are granted the gift of men by Eru Ilúvatar, the freedom to shape their own destinies and to escape the confines of Arda upon death. However, this gift comes with the burden of mortality, and it is this fear of death, coupled with the desire for power and legacy, that often leads men astray. Isildur, as a Númenórean, was part of a lineage with a complicated relationship to mortality. The Númenóreans were gifted with long life, strength, and wisdom. But over time, they became obsessed with extending their lives and preserving their kingdoms. This obsession with avoiding death and gaining more power ultimately led to the downfall of Númenor. Though Isildur was on the side of the free peoples in the War of the Last Alliance, the legacy of his ancestors' desire for immortality and dominion still lingered in his heart. The Ring, knowing these deep-seated fears and desires, was able to exploit them. It promised Isildur the ability to transcend his mortal limitations, to wield a power that could rival even the elves and the Maiar. The temptation to keep the ring was not just about possessing a beautiful artifact, but about seizing control over his fate and ensuring his legacy would live on forever. The ring whispered to Isildur's ambition, offering him the means to secure an unshakable dominion over his people and the enemies of Gondor. Elrond, as an elf who had witnessed the weaknesses of men for thousands of years, understood that forcing Isildur to destroy the ring might not have been possible. The corruption of the ring was so insidious that it could take hold of even the most valiant and noble individuals. Isildur was no exception. While he had fought bravely against Sauron and achieved great victories, the ring preyed upon his human vulnerabilities, his pride, his grief, and his desire for power. Had Elrond tried to take the ring from Isildur by force, it could have backfired in disastrous ways. The ring might have driven Isildur to violence, causing him to lash out against Elrond, who was, at that moment, one of his allies. The ring's ability to corrupt thoughts and twist relationships meant that any direct confrontation could have turned deadly. Isildur could have become paranoid and possessive, viewing Elrond's wisdom and advice as a threat to his claim on the ring, further entrenching his desire to keep it. Furthermore, Elrond understood that men were often driven by their immediate desires rather than a long-term view of the world, unlike the elves who saw time as a slow-moving river. Isildur, fresh from battle and still reeling from the loss of his father and brother, was vulnerable to the kind of short-term thinking that the ring encouraged. The thought of losing the ultimate symbol of victory over Sauron may have seemed unbearable to him, especially when weighed against the abstract and distant idea of the ring's potential to bring ruin in the future. Elrond's awareness of this susceptibility in men shaped his approach to the situation. He knew that Isildur was not in the right state of mind to make a decision that would benefit all of Middle-earth. Yet, instead of attempting to force Isildur's hand, which could have resulted in a far greater calamity, Elrond opted for a more cautious approach. He might have hoped that time, reflection, or the wisdom of future generations would rectify the situation. His deep understanding of men's vulnerability to corruption, especially by an object as powerful as the ring, made him wary of pushing too hard at such a precarious moment. Elrond, with his deep foresight and long view of history, likely understood that the destruction of the One Ring was not just an act to be carried out in a single moment, but part of a larger unfolding story that would span many generations. While the moment on the slopes of Mount Doom might have seemed like the final opportunity to end the ring's evil, Elrond's wisdom and experience may have led him to realize that there were other forces at play, forces that could not be circumvented or rushed. Elrond had seen enough of Middle-earth's history to recognize that sometimes the fate of the world depended on the actions of those least expected to play a role. This understanding of the deeper patterns of destiny likely informed his decision not to interfere forcefully with Isildur's choice. He may have seen that the ring's true destruction was not meant to occur at that moment, but that it required a more complex set of circumstances to be fully undone. One of the key elements of this foresight was the belief in hope, even in the face of overwhelming darkness. Elrond, like many of the wise figures in Middle-earth, placed great faith in the small and seemingly insignificant. While Isildur, a great warrior and king, failed to destroy the ring, it would ultimately be a simple hobbit, Frodo Baggins, who would carry the ring to its final doom. Elrond may have sensed that the time was not yet ripe for the ring's destruction, and that another bearer, less burdened by pride and the desire for power, would emerge in the future. This long game that Elrond envisioned was not just about waiting for the right individual to destroy the ring, but also about preserving the line of kings from Isildur to Aragorn. Elrond understood that the fate of Middle-earth was intertwined with the fate of the Númenórean line, and that this lineage, though tainted by Isildur's failure, would one day produce a king who would have the strength and wisdom to unite the free peoples and confront the growing shadow of Sauron. Elrond's faith in the future also extended to the Fellowship of the Ring. He played a critical role in bringing together the representatives of elves, men, dwarves, and hobbits, recognizing that the task of destroying the ring required the combined strength of all the free peoples. This decision reflected Elrond's understanding that no single individual or race could bear the burden of the ring alone, and that the true path to victory lay in unity and cooperation. Elrond's long-term perspective was also rooted in his understanding of the nature of evil in Middle-earth. He knew that evil could not always be vanquished in one swift blow, and that sometimes the struggle against darkness required patience, resilience, and sacrifice over many generations. Sauron's defeat in the War of the Last Alliance was a significant victory, but it was not the end of the fight. Elrond may have recognized that the ring, as a manifestation of Sauron's power, was bound to the larger struggle between good and evil that would continue to play out across the ages. By allowing Isildur to keep the ring, Elrond may have been playing a long and subtle game of hope. He understood that the battle to destroy the ring would require not just strength of arms, but also wisdom, courage, and sacrifice from future generations. The failure at Mount Doom was not the end. It was the beginning of a long journey that would ultimately lead to the ring's destruction in the fires from which it was forged. In the end, Elrond's decision was shaped by his deep understanding of fate, hope, and the interconnectedness of all living things. He knew that Isildur's failure, while tragic, was part of a larger story that had yet to fully unfold. His faith in the future, in the power of unity, and in the resilience of the free peoples of Middle-earth guided his actions, ensuring that even in the face of failure, there remained a glimmer of hope for the final victory over darkness.